Now the Passover and the festival of unleavened bread were 2 days away, and the high priests and the legal experts were seeking how to seize Jesus by deceit and put him to death. For they were saying, "Not during the festival, or there will be a riot of the populace." Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went off to see the high priests to hand Jesus over to them. When they heard, they rejoiced and promised to give him silver. So he waited for an opportunity to hand him over. And when it was evening, Jesus came with the 12. And while they were reclining and eating, Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me." They were saddened, and one by one they said to him, "Surely you don't mean me."
I am Judas Iscariot. Yes, I am the one who betrayed Jesus Christ. My name has gone down through the ages as a synonym for evil and treachery. These 30 pieces of silver have bought me a place forever in the history books. No children have been given my name. No one mourned at my grave. When anyone thinks of me, they think of betrayal. I was the one of the inner circle. I even shared bread at the Last Supper. Then I went out and betrayed my Lord and Master for a few pieces of silver coin. I want you to understand that I am not seeking your forgiveness or sympathy. I betrayed the Son of Man to his accusers. Whatever reasons I thought I had have long since faded away. Instead, I am asking you to realize that I am not the only one who stands for betrayal. It comes in many ways in this chaotic world. When people claim to be Christians, yet discriminate against other people who look different, or who sound different, or who have different traditions. Jesus is betrayed. When some people seem to have every privilege, every luxury, while others starve from lack of food or freeze with no shelter, Jesus is betrayed. When nations have no money for basic necessities, yet spend billions of dollars on the latest weapons, Jesus is betrayed. Yes, I am the one who went to the leaders and led them to Jesus. But remember, betrayal comes in many forms. Perhaps you already know that. I removed this bread from the table. It reminds me of the broken body of Jesus. It also reminds me that Jesus freely offered it to me at the Last Supper, even though he knew what was in my heart, even as he offers it to you.
And they led Jesus off to the headquarters where all the chief priests, the elders, and the legal experts were assembled. Peter followed at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest. He sat with the guards and warmed himself by the fire. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for evidence against Jesus in order to put him to death, but they were not finding any. Many testified falsely against him, but their statements did not agree. Some rose and testified falsely, saying, "We ourselves heard him say, 'I will pull down this sanctuary made with human hands, and in 3 days will build another, not made with hands.'" But even on this point, their testimony did not agree. Rising to stand in the center, the high priest asked Jesus, "Aren't you going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent and gave no answer. Again, the high priest asked, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" "I am," said Jesus, "and you will all behold the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven." The high priest tore his clothes. "What further need do we have for witnesses? You have heard the blasphemy. What do you think?" And they all condemned him to be deserving of death. Some began to spit on him and blindfold him, striking him in the face with their fists, saying, "Prophesy!" And even the guards began beating him.
My name is Caiaphas, the high priest. I was the judge and accuser at the trial of Jesus. I did what I thought was right. He threatened our power and our beliefs. He turned our religious practices into a joke by his preaching. He broke the Sabbath law, which we had preserved for centuries as our guide. He made us look like fools in front of all the people, tricking us with his answers to our questions. He had the common people following him like sheep, hanging on his every word. The Romans were worried about a riot. I have no doubt that he had to be stopped. It was better for one man to die than for a nation to be led astray and destroyed. I stand for judgment and tradition. I stand against the erosion of our law, the heritage we have worked so hard to preserve. I stand for what I know is right, and I will stop anyone who dares to speak out against me. I stand for righteousness. Jesus spent his time with outcasts and sinners, people who are not worthy of our attention, people who do not know our principles and beliefs. I believe that our law clearly tells us that we must be separate from those people and preserve ourselves. We are God's chosen, not them. Yes, I was the judge who condemned Jesus. He was too dangerous and had to be stopped. I removed this cup of wine from the table. Jesus offered it to all without distinction. I must preserve it for the chosen ones, those who like me and agree with me. That is my judgment.
And after singing a psalm, they went out to the Mount of Olives. "You will all stumble," Jesus told them, "for it is written, 'I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered.' But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you to Galilee." Peter declared, "Even if everyone else stumbles, I will not." "Truly, I tell you," Jesus answered, "today, yes, this night, before the rooster crows twice, you yourself will disown me 3 times." But Peter insisted emphatically, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you." And all the others said the same.
I am Simon, but Jesus called me Peter, which means the rock. He said I was the rock on which he would build his church. Tonight, I feel more like Simon the fisherman. I am ashamed to admit that I denied Jesus Christ. When asked, I refused to even say I knew him. I was more concerned with saving myself than with Jesus. I was weak and tired and afraid. What makes it worse for me was that just earlier, I bragged how strong I was. I said that even if others failed Jesus, I would never let him down. As usual, I opened my mouth too soon. I guess what really worries me is that I had such little faith. Just a while ago, I felt that with Jesus and a band of faithful people, anything was possible. Now, with the first sign of trouble, I doubted God, and fear took over. It's easy to say we believe when it doesn't cost us anything. It's easy to go to church once a week as long as we're expected not to do anything about it the rest of the time. It's easy to confess Jesus as long as we keep it private and not seem like a religious radical. It's easy to have faith as long as we don't let it affect our lives or schedules. Yes, it's far too easy to deny Jesus Christ any real room in our lives. I should know. The really sad part is that when we deny Him and our faith in God, we also deny His power. I have learned since then to trust God more, and I have experienced miracles of faith. Things have happened that I never thought were possible. Maybe you too need to claim the power Jesus has to offer. Maybe in your own way, you have denied Him as well. I now remove the Bible from our table. When we deny Jesus and our faith, we lose the truth the Bible brings.
And very early in the morning, the high priests held a council with the elders, the legal experts, and the whole Sanhedrin. They bound Jesus, took him away, and handed him over to Pilate. "Are you the king of the Jews?" he asked. "So you have said," replied Jesus. "Aren't you going to answer? See how many things they have accused you of?" But Jesus still made no reply, and Pilate was amazed. At festivals, it was Pilate's custom to release one prisoner whom the people requested. A man called Barabbas was in prison with the insurrectionists, a man who had committed murder in the uprising. As the crowd gathered, they began asking Pilate to do for them what he usually did. Pilate answered them, saying, "Do you want me to release for you the King of the Jews?" For he knew that the high priests had handed Jesus over out of envy and self-interest. But the high priests had already been at work, secretly stirring up the crowd to have Pilate release Barabbas instead. "What shall I do then with the one you call the King of the Jews?" The crowd shouted back, "Crucify him!" "Why? What crime has he committed?" asked Pilate. But they screamed even louder, "Crucify him!" Wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He ordered Jesus to be flogged and handed him over to be crucified.
It's hard to be a leader. It's hard to please all those people who keep on demanding more and more. My name is Pontius Pilate, and I am the Roman governor of Judea. When they brought Jesus to me at first, He seemed like any other prisoner, someone to be whipped and put in jail for a while. I needed those leaders to help me govern, so I usually did what they asked. But then I saw his eyes, not the eyes of a criminal, but of an innocent man. I guess I knew then that I should release him. He was not a threat to Rome or to the country, only to the inflated egos of the high priest. He shouldn't even have been in jail, far less humiliated and killed. I tried to stop it, you know. I first tried to convince the high priest, and when that didn't work, I appealed to the crowds. I was sure they would choose Jesus over the rebel Barabbas. But when the crowds called out, "Crucify him, crucify him," what choice did I have? I went along with them and had Jesus hung on the cross. For a while at least, things seemed to be calm. I stand for every leader who chooses to follow instead of lead. I knew what the right thing to do, but didn't want to rock the boat. I would rather lose my integrity than get involved in conflict. I would rather be popular than to do the right thing. I would rather be wrong than different. I chose to crucify Jesus rather than make my life complicated and uncomfortable. When I made my decision, I washed my hands and tried to show that I was still clean. And that was not my fault. I hoped the water would wash away my feelings of guilt. It didn't. I removed this water and basin, symbols of baptism. I chose to ignore my responsibilities, just like some of you.
The soldiers led Jesus away inside the palace courtyard, and they called together the whole company of soldiers. They removed his clothes and placed a purple robe over his shoulders, and weaving thorn branches into a crown, placed it on his head. They began to mock him. "Hey, Jesus! Hail, King of the Jews!" as they beat him over the head and spit on him, falling on their knees and mocking him. Then they removed the purple robe and put his own clothes back on him and led him out to be crucified.
I am one of the unknown soldiers who helped crucify Jesus. I might have come from anywhere in the Roman Empire. I may have been from what is now England, or perhaps France, maybe Russia. I am the ordinary soldier who does what he is told and never questions, never wavers. That night, we took 3 men and had them killed. We had done this often before. We had to wait around until they actually died. Usually, that took hours. To pass the time, we played games for money. We gambled for the clothes. No sense letting them go to waste. It was another night job, another hill, another crucifixion. Life is cheap. People are born, they live, they die. We just do our job. I don't ask many questions about the criminals. I don't like to know too much about them. That would make our job too hard. I get transferred soon to another part of the empire. I never get to stay too long in one place, so it doesn't make sense to get too involved. But this Jesus was different somehow. He never struggled with us. He didn't curse us the way the others do. He even said something about forgiving us. I didn't know we needed to be forgiven for doing what we are paid for. Perhaps he was innocent, as some said he was. Still, he cried out the way they all do, just before he died. It bothered me a bit this time, the suffering, the death. I have to work harder this time to get it out of my mind. Just my luck. I won the robe from the others. It will remind me of this night. Oh well, at least it's warm. I hear I'm going to the north next time. I take these offering plates from the table. We gambled for the clothes of Jesus and sometimes money. We need to buy things to help us forget or stop us from thinking too much.
The soldiers drafted a man walking by, coming in from a field. It was Simon the Cyrene, father of Alexander and Rufus, who helped take up Jesus' cross. They drove Jesus to the place called Golgotha, place of the skull, and tried giving him wine drugged with myrrh, but he did not take it. And they crucified him, and they divided up his clothes, casting lots to see what each would get. It was 9 a.m. when they crucified him, and the inscription of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." Along with him, they crucified 2 rebels, one on his right, the other on his left. Passers-by hurled insults at Jesus, shaking their heads, saying, "Ha! Wasn't it you who was going to destroy the temple and build it back again in 3 days? Why don't you just crawl down from that cross and save yourself?" In the same way, the chief priests and the legal experts were mocking Jesus to each other, saying, "He saved others, but he can't even save himself. Let the anointed one, the King of Israel, come down off that cross so that we might see and have faith." Those being crucified along with him were also ridiculing him.
My name is Simon, and I come from a village called Cyrene, just outside Jerusalem. I was caught up in the story by accident. I was coming to the city as I might have any number of other times. I was part of the crowd, a bystander, who had no intentions of ever getting involved. I just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. When those soldiers called out to me, forced me to identify myself, and then carry the cross, I was terrified. I had no idea what I was getting into. I would have preferred to be part of that nameless, faceless crowd of spectators who just watched the events from the sidelines, perhaps like you. I did not know who was being crucified. I assumed it was just another common criminal like all others. At first, this whole event seemed like just an annoyance, something to disrupt an otherwise fine day. I couldn't help noticing, though, that Jesus did not look like a common anything. It was obvious that he had been badly beaten and he was bleeding from a cut on his head, probably caused by those thorns that he was forced to wear. He didn't look very dangerous to anyone. He also seemed sort of calm and serene, as if he had accepted what was happening. The more I walked, the more curious I became. You can't carry a man's cross for very long without thinking about a few things, you know. When we arrived at the place of the skull, I had every intention of leaving, but somehow I couldn't. By calling me out of the crowd, I was now involved in what happened. I asked a few people who this Jesus was, and the more I heard, the more interested I became. I met some people who had been his followers, and they told me some amazing stories. By the time Jesus finally died, I had been riveted at the same spot for hours. I am no longer a spectator, a passive observer of life. By calling my name, those soldiers changed me forever. I take this cross from your table. I will always carry a part of the cross with me wherever I go.
And when it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3, when Jesus called out, "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani?" My God, why have you forsaken me?" Some who were standing by heard it and said, "Listen, he is calling Elijah." Someone ran to fill a sponge with cheap wine, put it on a staff, and offered it to Jesus to drink, as another said, "Let him be and see if Elijah comes to take him down." And Jesus let out a loud cry and died. The curtain of the sanctuary ripped in two from top to bottom. When the centurion who was standing in front of Jesus saw how he died, he said, "Surely this man was the Son of God." Now there were also women watching from a distance, among them Mary the Magdalene, and Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and Salome, who had been following Jesus and serving him in Galilee, and many other women who had come up from Jerusalem with him.
I am Mary of Magdala, and I stood at the cross when Jesus died. I had followed him wherever he went in that last year, and I will follow him to his grave. As soon as those soldiers let us, we will take him to a tomb and bury him properly. At least in death, I hope to give him some dignity. Hope, that's a strange word to use. If there's one thing I have nothing left of, it is hope. It was all taken away when Jesus was beaten and humiliated and hung on that cross. It's a sad twist of fate that it was Jesus who had given me back my hope before. I had been abused and corrupted. I lived a life of quiet desperation, going from one bad situation to another. I even let myself do degrading things just to survive. When I met Jesus, that all changed. He saw not just what was on the outside, all the paint and allure, he saw inside my soul. He offered me forgiveness and acceptance and love. He gave my life back to me. and now he was gone forever. I stand for all the lonely and despairing people who are forgotten by the world. I am the refugee, the homeless, the outcast, the offender, the panhandler. I am the one people turn their back on because they are uncomfortable looking. I am what good society is embarrassed by. I am also, though, a child of God. Jesus saw that too and gave me the courage to believe in myself again. He gave me hope once. Now that hope is gone. I remove the linens from the table and I see only blood. These linens we will use to wrap the body in the grave, for it is finished. The power of destruction have won. It is a sad day for all of us.